I've been watching him for a good many years. After the war I had a job with the iron works as a bookkeeper, but my eyes went bad, and I had to have them operated on. I drifted from one thing to another, and then I got this work for the city. I was uneasy when they put me on the Crescent, but nobody recognized me, except Emily Lancaster. She did, but I asked her to keep quiet. There is a good bit here in the record about George, and the tragedy of seeing him day after day. He looked like a fine fellow. Sometimes he spoke to me. I always wanted to sit down somewhere and have a real talk with him. To sow a thought and reap an act, that's a father's part. But the way things were, they could not shake him on the holly tree situation, although they went back to it again and again. What did you find when you got to the house near Holly Tree? It was done when I got there. All I could do was to get rid of the body. I put it in the trunk. What did you do with what you took out of the trunk? The money? I buried it that night. I never wanted to see it again. I buried it under some willows by the creek. Then I hid the drawers out of the trunk in the cellar. After that I walked into the town and got the expressman to take it away. Where did you get the foreign labels for the trunk? I'd traveled a great deal. I had some on some suitcases. All that I had to do was to soak them off. Did you want this money for yourself? God, no. Why should I want money? What became of the head? I don't know. It was in the satchel. On only one point was he vague at all. He had walked ever since, all of 2 days and a part of 2 nights, until he had reached the police station. But he did not know where he had walked. The horror had closed down on him. He was not thinking. He was simply moving on, like a machine. He had noticed some things, for here the record speaks of August, tarnished by the sun's hot breath. It rang true, all of it. Even those cynical policemen knew that. Their attitude softened, although his revelations made them shudder. When it was all over, Inspector Briggs put a hand on the thin shoulder and held it there a moment. "Now you go to sleep," he said, "and quit worrying. We'll fix this up. And we'll send your boy over to see you when you wake up." It was not until that long séance was over that an indignant surgeon trundled Herbert back to his bed, and growled fiercely that he was to get in and stay in. But that night I was allowed to see him, and it is from our talk then that I give Herbert's summary of the case as well as I can. From the beginning it seemed clear that the money Mrs. Lancaster had hoarded was involved somehow in her death. When Emily's part in taking it became known, then, we had two guesses. One was that she had taken it for herself, that her mother was secretly able to get about and so discovered her loss, and that Emily had killed her. Against this was Emily's total disregard for money and her actual devotion to Mrs. Lancaster. There were other elements too. Her unspotted dress that day was only one of them. Nevertheless, Margaret believed from the first that she had done it, and that her stepfather had killed Emily. We knew that the old gentleman had not done so, however, after Helen's story. I never did believe it, for that matter. What seemed evident after the death of Holmes was that we had, outside of the murders, two definite plots to get hold of the money. The one was that of Holmes himself, possibly with Peggy to help him. The other was not so clear. I figured that more than one person was involved in it, since we were pretty certain that on the night Holmes was killed no one had left the Crescent. What occurred to me then was that somewhere near where the body was found this outsider, whoever it was, had tried to get Holmes off the truck and had perhaps run over him by accident.